Hey everyone, welcome back to Then and Now. Today, John and I are talking about access to assault weapons. Then and now, and this came up. There was the horrific shooting in New York City the other day, where four people were killed, and there was that image of the shooter walking on the street before carrying an assault weapon, which was just a kind of shocking video to process. And so I touched base, and I was thinking that in 1994, the federal government, President Clinton was in office, passed a federal assault weapon ban that would last for 10 years, and it would put limits into the manufacture or sale of semi-automatic weapons, including AR-15s, as well as the magazine cartridge that is used for this kind of weapon. So I wanted just to think, now that is not in place. These weapons are spreading, and they're often used in kind of mass killing. So thinking back, kind of how are we in this place as opposed to where we were in the 1990s, John?
Well, we're in much worse shape. So between 1994 and 2004, when George W. Bush and the Republicans repealed the assault weapons ban, mass shootings were down 70% in that period. And that was when Columbine happened. So it's not like there were no mass shootings, but they were significantly down. And then they went back up when the assault weapons ban was lifted. But even worse than that, Trump is now effectively making machine guns legal. So they were outlawed in the 1930s, and then there were further restrictions in the 1980s. And just in May, Trump, the Justice Department indicated that they would not enforce laws against newfangled automatic weapons that are basically machine guns, that they used a technological loophole that related to gun innovation to basically allow even more of these even more damaging weapons on the street. And to give you an idea just quickly of how devastating these weapons are, so go back to 2012 and Sandy Hook. And the gunman got off 154 rounds in less than 4 minutes and killed 26 people. So, these are a huge public safety risk, and Trump, not surprisingly, is moving in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this issue is one of the gravest forms of political malpractice that we've had. And I think of kind of two different elements. One is that legislation in 94, as controversial as it was, and a lot of the gun rights groups were against it, did pass with bipartisan support. And it had some Republicans with it during the time of its implementation. And to see where the Republican Party has shifted since 1994 on this issue, assault weapons and other kinds of gun controls, is pretty dramatic. They have really coalesced around a pretty hard line, and we talk about kind of the asymmetric polarization of the parties. And with guns, I think you see how extreme the party has shifted, where what you said about President Trump is indicative of a party that has just dropped all efforts. And so assault weapons are one kind of weapon, and we know they are still kind of only one way in which lethal killings are done, but they are significant and they're very deadly, as you said. And the second is just we had a ban and it had an effect. There was a study I saw from Northwestern University that tried to look at how many kind of mass killings could have been prevented since 2005. This was in 2022, I believe, and it was, I think, like 38. And I'm sure there's disputes over the numbers, but the fact we are in a place where we have a template for how you can do this, for how we could at least get incremental reform on these kinds of weapons, and that we don't do it. And we live through this was not that kind of mass shooting in the end. It was just deadly. But we've lived through so many of these, and we don't go back to a framework that worked. Is really just indicative of a totally broken political system on an issue there shouldn't really be huge divisions over.
Yeah, I mean the old rural urban breakdown on guns is has been replaced by a Democrat versus Republican divide. That comes out of the 1994 midterms when Bill Clinton and the Democrats, got shellacked in part because of the crime bill, which did a lot of good things. Joe Biden really engineered it, put 100,000 cops on the street, but it had these gun safety measures that Republicans were able to spin as unpopular. But in the years since then, surveys have been pretty clear that the public wants common sense gun safety. Better not to call it gun control because that is easier to be against. Common sense gun safety measures. And part of what Democrats should be planning for, not if, but when they get back into power, and we have to be hopeful about this, is to make this a central issue once again, and to not normalize what happened. I mean, I was just, as we end, Julian, I was really surprised at the fact that this gunman in New York had bought his semi-automatic weapon legally from a guy in a casino in Las Vegas, and then starts to wreak havoc on the streets of New York. Uh, that barely got mentioned at all. So we can't lose our sense of outrage about this and just get all defeatist about the possibility of ever having common sense gun laws. We did it before in the 1990s, and we can do it again.
All right, another edition of Then and Now. Thanks for talking, John, and we'll talk next week.
Okay, see you next week, Julian.